Hello, everyone. This is Pastor Joe of Sea Life Ministries, and today we are going to continue our study in the book of Philippians. Today we are on chapter 4, verse 5, and last week we touched on the ladies who had their weekly prayer meetings, and those of us whose names are written in the book of life, and then one of my favorite verses, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. And again, I don't think our circumstances should dictate whether or not we are rejoicing. I think we should at all times, and yes, that is easier said than done. But let's pick up on verse 5. Philippians 4, verse 5. Let your gentleness be known to all men, the Lord is at hand. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. So when he says gentleness, it can also mean graciousness or forbearance, but it refers to contentment with and generosity towards others. It can also refer to mercy or leniency toward the faults and failures of others. It can even refer to patience in someone who submits to injustice or mistreatment without retaliating. Graciousness with humility encompasses all the above. And then when it says at hand, that can refer to nearness in space or time, but here, in this reading, it suggests nearness in space. The Lord encompasses all believers with his presence. And to touch on that, let's head over to the Old Testament book of Psalms in chapter 119, verse 151. And there it says, You are near, O Lord, and your commandments are truth. That is a short verse, but it's the truth nevertheless. And, from time to time, I do like to pull verses out of the Old Testament because, we have the Old Testament and New Testament in the same book because they're both very relevant. And then in verse 6, where it says, Be anxious for nothing, to fret and worry indicates a lack of trust in God's wisdom, sovereignty, or power. Delighting in the Lord and meditating on his word are a great antidote to anxiety. Just like it says in chapter 1, verse 2, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. And then continuing on where it says, in everything, all difficulties are within God's purposes. And, everything is everything. It doesn't mean just the things we can't handle or we think it's too small to bother God with. He wants everything. And then when it says prayer, supplication with thanksgiving, make all your requests known to God, it's gratitude to God. Gratitude to God accompanies all true prayer. Just like when Jesus healed the man with leprosy, he came back and thanked the Lord, and that obviously made him happy. And in my opinion, whether your request is something you think is huge, gigantic, monumental, or something just, minor, I think we should go back to him. And even if it's not answered in the way that we want it to be, I think we should be thankful because we know that, everything that God does, he does for the good to those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. But that's another verse from Romans that'll be on another day, another sermon. So now let's head over to verse 7, and it'll tie in what I just said. The peace of God that surpasses all understanding, the tranquility, or as I sometimes call it, the majesticness, is promised to the believer who has a thankful attitude based on unwavering confidence that God is able and willing to do what is best for his children. And again, like I had mentioned, Romans 8:28, but surpasses all understanding. That is absolutely true. I'm sure you and I can talk for hours, if not days, about experiences we've had where even going through it, we had this peace that we could not explain. And there are times where I don't even want to try to explain it. I'd rather just say that it is of God and just enjoy it and know that he is with us through anything and everything that we go through, as long as we let him. This refers to the divine origin of peace. It transcends human intellect, analysis, and insight. And it will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Now, when it says guard, I've checked a couple of notes and they all say the same thing. It's a military term meaning to keep watch over. God's peace guards believers from anxiety, doubt, fear, and distress. And another version says, this verse depicts a military sentry standing guard. And then when Paul says, hearts and minds, he wasn't making a distinction between the two. He was making a statement referring to the whole inner person. Because of the believer's union with Christ, he guards his inner being with his peace, meaning Christ or Jesus' peace. And since verse 8 starts off on a new idea, new verse, I think we will end it here for now. Again, I sincerely hope that you are enjoying these studies, or flyover looks as I call them, as much as I am. And I feel like I'm starting to hone in and get better at figuring out what I want to do, how I deliver it, and all that. So I hope you're enjoying this. And until next time, have a great day, and Lord bless you.